Hi everybody, welcome back to the Crime Lab. So today's video is going to be all about Vasili Komarov. He was a Russian serial killer that was working out of Moscow between 1921 and 1923. So very early, 2020, 1920s, not 2020s, 1920s. So operating about a century ago now. So he is actually one of the earliest known serial killers in the Soviet Union. So Komarov was a horse trader, like I said, based out of the Moscow area, Moscow region of Russia. And he, in total, murdered at least 23 people, or 23, my mistake, 33 people. In the stables next to his home. Like I said, he was a horse trader, so he had a setup for his horses. That's where he ended up murdering his people because it wouldn't seem suspicious that he was going in and out of there. And eventually he was sentenced to death, but I will get to that later. So he was born Vasili Petrov. I'm hoping I am pronouncing that right. As I have said in other videos, English is the only language I speak. So if I'm mispronouncing something and somebody speaks that language, feel free to call me out. He was born January 1st, 1871 in the Vitebsk governance area. I'm gonna guess that's how it's pronounced. Of the Russian Empire. Born to a very large, very poor family, where unfortunately many of the members suffered from alcoholism, which is very unfortunate. And he succumbed to it, started drinking at the age of 15. Like many people of the time, he was contracted into the army for 4 years. Very, very common at the time, where it's like you're required to do so many years of service for the military. So he did his 4 years like he was required to. It doesn't say what age he was sent to the army. I couldn't find the age that he was sent, or the year that he was sent to the army, but like I said, he did do his 4 years. And then he ultimately married at 28 years old. I couldn't find any information on his wife, or much of what happened after he got out of the military before he married. There wasn't a ton of information about that. But during the Russian-Japanese War, Komarov traveled to the Far East. So like Siberia, traveled, if you're going from like St. Petersburg, Moscow, he traveled towards Russia, towards Siberia, towards Japan area. And he was able to make a small fortune there. Again, I couldn't find out how he made it. I don't know if it was in horse trading, like he ended up doing later on in life, or if it was doing something else. But he ended up wasting all the money that he earned. The small fortune that he earned, squandered it all. And then eventually it was found out that he was robbing a military warehouse. And he ended up getting a year in prison. And during that time, while he was in prison, his wife actually died of cholera. So he was married at 28. Some stuff happened. Made a fortune, lost it all, started robbing a military warehouse, got a year, his wife dies. So eventually, after his wife dies, after he gets out of prison for the 1 year, he settles in Riga, which is now Latvia, where he married a Polish widow who was named Sophia, and they had 2 children. Unfortunately, as I said before, his family struggled with alcoholism, as did he. and he would often beat his wife and children while he was like in an alcoholic fit of rage. So during World War I, when the Germans entered the Baltic region of Europe, so like Eastern Europe and Russia, him and his family moved to the Volga region of Russia. Now, perspective of that, I mistakenly did not look that up on the map, so I could not tell you like the major cities in that region of Russia at the time. But then when the Russian Empire began to collapse, kind of the start of the Soviet Union, end of the Russian Empire, he joined the Red Army during the October Revolution, where he learned to read and write, which he apparently had not done. He had not had the education to do that prior to this, and rose to the rank of platoon commander. So then, while fighting in the Russian Civil War, he was captured by the White Army troops of General, I'm going to attempt to pronounce this, I have it written down, Denikin, and managed to escape where he was to avoid the judgment of the Military Revolutionary Tribunal, and he changed his name from Vasil Tretnovich Petrov to Vasil Ivanovich Komarov. So now he's Vasil Komarov. So this is about the time that he starts his murder spree. So starts February 1921. Lenin has just recently declared the new economic policy allowing private enterprises starting private enterprises. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I also have a cat right next to me, so camera's gonna shuffle a little bit. And so Komarov at this time is becoming acquainted with buying and selling horses. So he's meeting new clientele that want to purchase horses from him. And if they were interested, he would bring them home, serve them vodka until they were drunk. Then he would take a hammer, like a small little hammer that you would hammer nails into a wall with, and kill them. He would beat their head in. And then he would slit their throat. And then he would place the corpse into like a large trash bag, like, those big, like 50-gallon trash bags. He would put them in something similar to that. And then he would essentially drag them around the house, bury them, or his kind of alternate was to throw them in the Moscow River, which for him was not too far away. After about a year of killing, his wife actually found out about it, Sophia, and apparently she actually reacted very calmly and was like, oh, okay, I'm going to join you. I'm going to actually get in on this. So then in total in 1921, he committed over 17 murders and then at least another 12 in the next 2 years. So between 1921 and 1923, he committed at least 33 murders, 33 known murders. There very well could have been more, just we don't know about it. So the police actually noticed the murders. They started noticing the murders when they found 21 bodies of men disposed of in sacks of garbage every Thursday or Saturday, leading to a 2-year investigation. So they saw it. They're like, okay, we know somebody is doing this, but we don't know who, which is why the investigation ended up taking so long. And Komarov was known as, a happily married man, but close family and friends knew that he was an abusive alcoholic. And a lot of people knew, it was pretty much common knowledge at that point in the immediate area where he was, that at one point he tried to kill his 8-year-old son. So they knew that he at least had a temper and was an alcoholic. So that was something that he knew. And some of his customers, some of his regular customers that would buy horses from him, noticed that he would go to the market to sell on Wednesdays and Fridays, but he never came with horses. He always had the horses at his stables. He never actually physically came with them for people to look at, which of course was suspicious, because if you're going to sell horses, why wouldn't you bring at least a couple with you for people to look at? So eventually he was, of course, arrested. In 1923, the police arrived at his home originally about illegal alcohol, but because they were like looking around doing their investigation based off of the alcohol, they were checking his stables and actually found his most recent victim, where he had stowed the body until he could dispose of it. And then on March 18th, he was actually officially arrested. They weren't able to arrest him the same day they did the initial investigation for the alcohol, because he had jumped out a window and was evading police until then. So minimum a few days he was on the run. And then he actually admitted, once he was arrested, he actually admitted that he had killed 33 people. Although he had admitted that robbery was the initial intention, because, these people were like, hey, I want to buy a horse. So there was the thought that they had money. So he would kill them to rob them. They ended up not having a lot of money on them. So then he actually, after he admitted, he took the police to the places where he said he had disposed of the bodies. Only 6 bodies were actually found of the 33 that he admitted to. And while he was being interrogated, while he was being interviewed, when he was admitting to all of the murders, he's like, oh yeah, it was very easy. It was an easy job. When people are drunk, they don't put up too much of a fight. Which I guess not, And while he was in prison, he did actually attempt suicide 3 different times. It didn't say the different methods that he tried, which I personally didn't really want to know anyway. But yeah, he attempted 3 different times because he wanted to essentially go out on his own terms. He didn't want to go out on somebody else's terms, in a matter of speaking. And his wife Sophia, who when she found out that he was murdering people, she actually started participating. She was sentenced to prison as well. She was found guilty. Because police actually were like, it's kind of impossible that she wouldn't have known that he was doing at least some of this. So, you're kind of going to be either an accessory to crime, or you're just going to be charged as a murderer as well. That's kind of up to the court with how they decide it. And both Komarov and Sophia were sentenced to death and were executed by firing squad on June 18th, 1923. So there's, of course, a lot going on there. Not a ton of information, which is kind of unfortunate. With some of these historical killers, murderers, criminals, I'd love to have more information, but with some of them, kind of depending on where they're based out of, in a matter of speaking, there's only so much information that was documented at the time, which kind of leads to there's not quite as much information for us to look at now. And of course, you get a lot of contradictory information depending on the sources that you're looking at. So the stuff that I talked about today was the stuff that was consistent throughout every source that I was able to find. There might be a couple of things that, I saw in a couple that maybe if you guys look into it, you might not see as consistent across the board, but like I said, from the sources that I looked at, these were the most consistent facts that I was able to find. But if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts, go ahead and put those in the comments. If you guys have any suggestions for people you'd like me to talk about, whether historical criminals, current criminals, more recent stuff, because I've been doing a lot of the early 1900s, feel free to leave those in the comments as well. Have a great rest of your day.